Message says it's now streaming live on YouTube. Okay. Call the meeting to order. And we'll begin by acknowledging that we are gathered tonight in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral, present, and future territory of the Mi'kmaq peoples. And tonight we gather with the intent followed by the living peace and friendship treaties. And we do so with respect, cooperation, and coexistence. We'll call the meeting to order and welcome you all to the meeting tonight in spite of the rain. Nice to see everybody turn out. We've got a few folks joining us in the gallery, and hopefully there are hundreds of people joining us at home.
There are 5.
There are 5.
Yeah.
Well, we only get a few more to go. You have an agenda that was emailed out to you, Council. And what is your wish with the agenda?
I need a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Councillor Feeney seconds. On the motion, on the question, all in favor, motion's carried. And let's go to the minutes of the special council meeting of September the 6th. Do we have a motion?
I would move that we accept the minutes from the September 6th council, special council.
Thank you, Councillor Carver.
Second.
Seconds. You heard the motion. On the question, all in favor? That motion is carried. So let's go to the regular council meeting of September the 26th.
I'll move that the minutes of that council meeting of September 26th be accepted as circulated.
Thank you, Councillor Carver. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Feeney. You've heard the motion. On the question, all in favor? That motion is also carried. Deputy CAO, do we have any people for the public input session? We have one here. Okay, anything electronically or? No, okay, please.
May I sit here?
Sure.
Sure. Oh, sure.
Hello, my name is Tammy Turner, and I live at 228 Hawthorne Road. I'm here to continue to bring to your attention the concerns of the Airbnb on Hawthorne Road. You should have received today an email, which is a copy of a letter from the Hawthorne Hill Neighbors Association that was sent to the owners of the illegal Airbnb at 288 Hawthorne. In that letter, our association brings to the attention of the owners of the residents the bylaw of the town of Mahone Bay, the new government legislation of September 30th regarding Airbnbs, and the covenants on Hawthorne, which do not allow for short-term rentals or businesses. The purpose in writing this letter to the owners was to ask for their compliance in not operating an Airbnb in our neighborhood. We delayed sending this letter to the owners to allow time for Mr. McMullen, the bylaw officer, to investigate and enforce this bylaw. Our association is a strong one. We represent 33 individuals and 17 households or property owners. While it has been my face that you have seen on this issue, it is a concern for our entire association. You also have before you in your materials tonight a letter that is written by me and my husband, or my husband and me. This letter represents my personal frustration in attempting to deal with this illegal Airbnb over the past months, and the lack of movement in attempting to get this Airbnb shut down. As one councillor told me, he didn't respond to my previous emails because he felt the matter would be a simple one. It is now obvious it has not been a simple matter. The last time I was before council, we had just been told by the bylaw officer that he had made a deal with the owners of the illegal Airbnb that they could continue their operation of this business until September 30th. We were also told by Mr. McMullen in an email on September 23rd that the owners had informed him, the bylaw officer, that, and I quote, 288 Hawthorne has deregistered with the province as a short-term rental, as well as removing his listing from the Airbnb site, end quote. The council was also told at the September 26th council meeting by the CAO, Mr. Dylan Hyde, that the Airbnb had been delisted, and this was followed up by a letter from Mr. Hyde to us stating the same. At that council meeting of September 26th, Mr. Hyde stated that he had felt that the Airbnb site had been delisted because the dates had been blocked off for the months of October going forward, and that he didn't know how you removed advertising on the Airbnb site. Before Mr. Hyde made such a statement, he should have found out how to remove an Airbnb from that site. The matter is quite simple. The operator of the Airbnb informs the site that they want their Airbnb removed, and within 48 hours, this should occur. This Airbnb is still active on the site, and while the dates for October going forward are blocked off, the Airbnb is still advertised on the map with photos and prices for the accommodation and an ability to private message the owners. Hence, it is not removed as the bylaw officer informed us or delisted as the CEO has informed us. As of September 28th, there has been one vehicle located at this Airbnb with Ontario license plates. The owner of the Airbnb posted on Facebook that this is their long-term tenant. My question to you tonight is what has been done to ensure that this is the case, given that the operators of the Airbnb have not legally operated this Airbnb, and it took until the end of September to get compliance? Do we wait for the next 18 days to find out if this indeed is a long-term rental? Has the bylaw officer required evidence of a lease agreement indicating the term of length? Did the bylaw officer require a signed statement from the owners indicating that they will not operate any short-term rental going forward, given the past transgressions? We simply do not know. A bylaw is only effective if people heed it. When a bylaw is not followed, it is only as effective as the enforcement of the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We have no presentations? No? Okay. Let's go to our correspondence. We have 3 items there. What is your wish? Councillor Feeney?
Mayor, on item 5.1, as of standard protocol, I think we're going to receive and file the correspondence from Tammy and Tom Turner. And I think we're going to seek at some point some further feedback based on this evening's presentation from staff. So I think I'd like to, first motion is to receive and file 5.1. And the second motion is to request a future staff a report on the issue and a report back to council at that time.
There's 2 motions in there.
Yes.
Do we have a seconder for motion number 1?
See, file.
Yes.
Yes.
Councillor Wilson, on that motion, on the question, all in favor? Motion is carried. Your second motion, Councillor Feeney,
It's to request a staff report on
Review
the topic to
on the
the.
situation. Okay, do we have a seconder for that one? Councillor Now? Motion on the question, CAO?
Yeah, just on the question, obviously staff happy to prepare reports for council when requested. We can't comment on a specific bylaw matter in open council, so, you know, we can't do a report that says whose license plate was in whose driveway, which day. That's invasion of privacy. Council can receive further closed session updates. Obviously, that's the play. I think what really seems to be the crux of the matter is how municipal bylaws are being enforced, the existence of summary offenses in some cases, the use of litigation as a method of enforcement, which is the case here. I've talked about this on many occasions. At this point, it seems necessary to put it in the form of a staff report. So I do appreciate the request. You know, the town has certain powers. In this case, the land use bylaw is enforced through litigation. So rather than have a lot of accusations that we should have spent a lot more money going through court actions, taxpayers' money, and drawn this out into a process which could have lasted years through the courts. We work to get compliance in the manner that our very experienced bylaw officer does after 40 years of work in enforcement. We can have a report that highlights how certain bylaws are enforced, the steps that are taken in general terms. But, certainly I can't speak
Fair
to
enough.
accusations about whose car has been parked in which laneway for too long. That's a privacy issue, to be honest. So I don't know if the motion could be amended to reflect what we can report on and what does seem to be the accusation towards staff, which I think has been made in this letter.
Well,
We should address.
I think there's a general consensus that any staff report has to be at a high enough level to not get into a specific enforcement situation. I think that conceptually, a report outlines the rules of the road at this point for short-term rentals and might, I think, clear the air. So, I mean, we just have a recent land use bylaw update. I think that the rules are an improvement, but the rules are kind of pretty well codified in that document. I just think an opportunity to, I guess for the future council, to have the conversation about what are the rules in the community, like where can you have them, what paperwork is required, which ones are grandfathered, all of the, the Q&As, I think would be helpful so that in the next 4 years, if everybody has a clear understanding of exactly what the situation is.
Councillor Nolan?
Yeah, I think that in that report, we should also have some kind of a clarification to figure out whether the property has been delisted or whether it's still active on the site. I mean, if it's operating illegally, then, it should not be listed on the Airbnb site. So maybe staff could make that inquiry and find out what has been done to get it delisted.
CAO?
So again, I don't think that's something that can be included in a staff report. Like, I'm happy to speak to that point in closed session. I think we've had plenty of commentary from the general public about how a could go about changing the way in which the property is listed. Ultimately, we're looking for compliance with our rules, which don't say you can't advertise a property with the dates blanked out. What they say is you can't have a short-term rental operation. So we're working towards compliance with our bylaws. The type of commentary entailed here and what the property owner could do is speculative, and it really does start to get into the arrangements that they have for the use of their own property, which are not public. Beyond the alleged offense, they're not public. There's no need for anyone to account for who's staying in their home. This is simply not a piece of information that anyone else is entitled to have. So I think it's important that we keep in mind that while this is of interest to the wider community, bylaw investigations are confidential, and we are bound by certain requirements in that regard. So, like, as to what the property owner could do, believe me, the property owner knows what they could do. I don't think there's more I can say as to why they haven't done it or what they've chosen to do, but I can speak to what they have done. And I have done that. So I just think we're being drawn into something here that supposes that residents are responsible for the enforcement of the town's bylaws. And that's simply not the case, and it can't work that way.
Councillor Owens-Croft?
I'm just wondering, with enforcement, like, can't there be like a fine for first offense, second offense, a bit higher, and let litigation if that fails? I think it's cumbersome to leave that as the only way to deal with a situation.
And so that is a good example. I know council has, but it's like, that is an example of the kind of thing that report would do a good job in being able to cover, is to point out that there are, bylaws that can be put into place to create penalties as summary offenses. Currently around the province, that is not a method of enforcement commonly linked to land use bylaws. Like, they're typically not enforced that way, but we can get legal advice. We can talk about it, not specific to one property, but to the concept of enforcement. I think this letter actually references the fact that there are summary offenses associated with the provincial deadline that has now been imposed and the provincial requirement to register and demonstrate compliance. So, obviously, we'll take the opportunity to use the methods the province has put in place to assist municipalities in this regard. And now that those are in place, we can also comment on that in the staff report. So I think there's a great need for the report. The report's a great initiative. I just want to be clear as to what we can and what we can't include in that report.
Well, I think the CAO has made the point clearly about how, what can be covered in the report and what can't be. I think there's a general consensus around the table and understanding of that.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, just repeating what I said last time, is Alan, how enforce the bylaw? The speed at which it was enforced might be in question, and people might disagree or agree, but from my experience of bylaw enforcement, it was done in a good timely manner. Now, it might not be as fast as we want it to be, and maybe that's something to talk about in terms of timelines. But I think enforcement has been done. Now, if they don't comply going forward, there's still time for us to figure out whether that compliance is not done. I guess for me, much more than the report, because I think we already had a summary of what's happened by email. Much more than a report would be a case of, so how does the town of as a unit, how do we ensure that compliance continues post this enforcement which is done? Because I think that's more important, just to ensure that it's not a case of the owner delaying, and then I don't think that's the case, so I think they've shut it down. But how do we ensure that that doesn't happen? I think that would be more, for me, looking forward, more of a solution than going round and round trying to figure out what's happened in the past. So from now going forward, how do we ensure that that property continues to comply and other properties will comply going forward?
And I think we can comment on that in general terms in the report. Yeah, absolutely.
Does your motion, do you intended to include the piece from the recent changes at the province level on this question?
Well, I think that
Or just our own bylaw?
the theme is really around short-term rentals 101.
Mm-hmm,
What's allowed, what's not allowed,
okay.
high level. And I acknowledge entirely that the document will not get into specifics around a specific bylaw enforcement,
Right.
but rather it's a roadmap so that the community can understand what the rules of the road are. So, and I'm assuming it will be crafted at that level, and it's going to take some time to do that. So I'm sure the next council will enjoy reading it whenever that happens, when it's prepared.
So you're comfortable with the motion?
I am, if there's consensus around the table.
Okay,
Mhm.
Does that include investigating other ways of enforcing for litigation?
I think my thinking is just what's in the toolbox right now, and what are the rules as they are currently in place.
okay.
So not trying to reinvent anything new, just what are the rules today?
Councillor Wilson, did you have a comment? No? Councillor Carver?
Nope.
No? Okay, then let's go back to the motion. Duly moved and seconded. On the question, we're done. All in favor? Motion's carried.
Mayor,
Okay.
on item 5.2 and 5.3, I move that we receive and file those two items as my first motion.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Wilson? Moved and seconded to receive and file of 5.2 and 5.3. On the question. All in favor?
I have a
I'm
question.
sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, it's another motion. Sorry, yeah. Fair enough, I'm capable.
Are you happy now? Okay. The Deputy Mayor is happy, we can move on.
There you go.
All in favor? That motion is carried.
And Mayor, in a similar theme to our earlier conversation, I'd move that staff prepare a report for council on both requests in the proposal and their feedback and recommendations on those two items.
And that would include the potential impacts of each situation
Sure.
on our utility and our operation.
Mhm.
Okay,
Before I second it, could I suggest that it include creating or proposing the terms and conditions of the proposed loan, long-term loan.
Fair enough.
Okay,
As amended,
with
Mayor,
that, you're seconding?
Yes.
You're accepting the amendment?
please.
Okay, you've heard the amended motion on the question. All in favor? Motion's carried. Let's go to staff reports. It's the start of the month, so CAO gets away with the short
A
one.
lot of stars.
It's the shortest one ever.
Oh, yeah.
But that's intentional, obviously, it's all cleared off essentially, so, happy to take questions, but I'll just explain briefly that what we did here was we moved items that would not be completed down into the list of post-October report deliverables at the end of this 4 pages.
Mhm.
So there are in fact 9 items there itemized that have held over. Everything else was either completed or moved down on there. The one exception to that is the number 3, issue request for proposals for the creation of a future development plan for Park Cemetery. And I think it's fair to say that's on hold after the last cemetery committee meeting, because this had been a recommendation of the cemetery committee. I'm taking the liberty to say that if the cemetery committee is suggesting it be put on hold, that wouldn't move forward at this time unless council wants to have further discussion on that item, so.
And Mayor, I noticed that there isn't a cemetery committee report, but I think this is an outcome of the geotechnical work that was done, that we talked about at length on Friday. And the fact that we now know that there are certain areas of the cemetery, specifically around the lake, that we had intended for development, but now the geotechnical work is saying that's going to be impossible. Hence, no requirement to do the plan, because that area is never going to be suitable for interment. So anyway, I'm sure there'll be a further discussion when the cemetery minutes come out at the next meeting.
Okay, anything else from anyone?
Just
Councillor
regarding
Knight.
16 with the donation to the Legion, that's not including the one that we had given regarding celebrating Home Bay. We had said about sponsoring their lunch, their breakfast.
Yeah, these are 2 different things.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned that time that I was really disappointed we didn't see any advertisement for the fire department's functions during this whole thing. And I felt that we should also get some contribution towards our breakfast, which was held this last weekend.
Yeah, I think at the time is, staff would obviously love to know when the fire breakfasts are gonna be held, but we weren't aware of
Yeah,
that fire breakfast, yeah.
And this one would have usually been next week, but we moved
Yeah.
it forward because of the Thanksgiving.
And it's always a good reason, I just think,
Yeah.
let us know sooner, anyway, my apologies for not including the fire breakfast in that promotion.
Commissioner, ask a question about the Park Cemetery thing.
Mhm.
I remember months and months ago, Dr. Fees said at one point that we had space for about 150 more former residents. And that was enough for the foreseeable future. Does this report change that equation?
I can speak to that, Dylan, and then chime in if you. So the town has made the expansion, but it's on the top left-hand side, not, so these are kind of different investments. I believe it's 110 is the.
I think that's about where we worked out, yeah.
So although the ground isn't elegant now and not a beautiful place to be interred yet, I believe 110 plots have been created and should see us through, let's call it a decade, I would suggest, based on historical volumes.
And further to that, the section that's been opened at the top is about a third of the usable space at the top, so we have every reason to believe that we can open another 200 plus up there. It's just that, our original concept was gonna see development of lots elsewhere in the cemetery. So now we're gonna go back to the drawing board of the committee and consider what we might do, but certainly we'll continue the expansion on the top. The cost benefit is really, really straightforward up there because it's very easy to prepare those lots. They were already cleared off years ago, so it's just scrubbing them off there, yeah.
So anyway, if you need a plot, come to town hall, they'll sell you one.
So if any of the users complain about the plot they've got
Right,
not being attractive, be sure to let us know.
That's
will you,
right.
Councillor
you
Bean?
can donate it, you can donate a tree as well, all at the same time.
Okay. Anything else? We get a motion to receive and file a report.
Mhm.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Now. On the question, all in favor, motion is carried. Thank you, CAO.
Thank you.
Always riveting. Okay, let's go to the next thing on the agenda, curbside election request for proposals. A memo.
Come on up, Gabe.
Gabe, you want to speak to us about that?
I can, yes.
Gabe's our man in Havana with NJSB. He manages the waste site and
Don't feel the need, Gabe, to walk through the whole report. You can just speak to questions, but if there is anything you want to highlight, feel free.
he's just trying to hurry up.
I told him he would not have to make a
No,
presentation.
no, you don't, you don't.
And I can be long-winded at the NJSB board meetings, so,
No.
no, so the NJSB had directed us to go to tender as early as possible for this to encourage, competition and, allow proponents to source, collection equipment. So we did receive 2 bids, one from our existing, or our incumbent collector, which is GE All Trucking, and they were low bid at $75,161 for year 1. And there's a annual rate increase, they've offered of 2.89% locked in over the 7 years of that contract. They've also recommended going with CPI, but I think in today's climate, if we can get a locked-in rate, it's worth looking at that. And this will be over a 7-year term for starting on April 1st, 2026 and going until March 31st, 2033. They also have given some provisional storm debris pricing by the hour. I don't think Home Bay had to participate in that last year, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, Dylan, but
So I think we did.
did you? Okay, so yeah, we have to do any special collections for.
Thankfully, none this year, but you know,
Yeah,
it happened.
so I know, yeah, there was significant debris brought out to our site last year during the multiple events, so. I don't want to get too deep into the proposals that we aren't recommending, but if anybody has any questions on them, they did have an interesting sustainability proposal that involved transitioning to a 4-cart system, but logistically and financially, it didn't make a lot of sense to pursue it at this time, so.
So is this fixed in for the 7 years, or should like there be a large increase in the cost of fuel to run the vehicles? Could they come back and renegotiate the contract?
No, there's a clause tied to the UARB, fuel adjustment clause in the contract, so that's
Okay.
actually adjusted, with the monthly pay.
Okay.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Like to move that we move forward. Do we need a motion?
Yeah, they put theirs at the very beginning, so you don't even have to read the whole thing, so I think you would start with that, because that's how I.
Well, I'd like to move that the council award RFP 2024-003 curbside collection services to GE's All Trucking Limited for a total amount of $75,161.68 during year 1, with an annual rate increase of 2.89% and updated dwelling counts over a 7-year term.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Carver? Moved and seconded. On the question. Councillor Wilson, did you, no? All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Absolutely painless.
Thanks for getting me out quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the Driftwood Monster installation. Now, was that a big installation or the monster installation
We're using the
request?
term driftwood monster a lot more than we ever thought we would have.
There you go.
So happy to take any questions. This report was requested just to provide a little bit more clarity to the request from the chamber at the last meeting. We didn't have a lot of time to turn it around, but we did get out and meet with them, and I think everything that council was looking for is in here, so If there's any questions, happy to take them. The recommendation is included.
Councillor Carter.
I'll move the council direct staff to coordinate the installation of the driftwood monster in the aquatic garden park with the Mahone Bay Tourism Chamber of Commerce at their request.
I'll second that.
Okay. It's moved and seconded on the question. If I could, CAO, is this a joint project between us and the chamber?
It's really their initiative. I mean, they're locating these monsters in various locations around the community. I believe this is part of like a walking incentive, you know, find the different monsters type of thing. So our parks are some of the very obvious locations for that. So I think they just went around town and identified some locations. And
But it's on their dime.
so it's all their project. They're gonna take care of everything, but they wanted the location in the park.
And is this to be left out year round?
It is year round, yeah, as referenced in their report. I guess they're being treated for weather conditions and they're supposed to
Okay.
be able to stay out all year round.
That's fine. Okay, no more questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. The driftwood monsters now have a home. The monster has a home.
Did think about maybe one in the pond, but that request hasn't come forward, so.
Please don't.
An aquatic monster to come.
Let's go to,
Yeah, in the Jubilee pond.
get a little mechanism so the roof would come up out of the water and go back
Well, the
down.
more stormwater. we
Bubble
get,
the water
more the
around.
pond fills up.
Yeah. 6.4, portable washroom for Jubilee Park.
Good questions already, I guess.
Oh, no,
This recommendation came.
I
from us
assume
and
the CAO was gonna speak
And
to it.
council just wanted.
Oh, the CAO
Information,
proposed.
so, this is, again, a report that I think includes the information requested, but the recommendation isn't to do anything at this time because it is already October, so we're just suggesting it be, included in next year's budget.
Okay,
So I had put up my hand to make the motion, but I also had a question, which is what is the?
let's get the motion second.
Oh, okay,
Councillor Knapp.
the council,
You'll second it, okay.
the council directs staff to include the seasonal accessible portable washroom for Jubilee Park in the draft 25-26 budget.
They're chilly in January. Anyway, did you have a question?
Yes, so my question is, what would be the season that it would be out there before?
Yeah, I did keep the report intentionally just a little bit vague on that to let Jonathan and the suppliers of the porta potty weigh in on that, but I think we've been typically doing a washroom, you know, opening type of season from April, late April through to well, the heated washrooms would stay open later, but typically like mid to late October. So I'm assuming we're talking April to October, whether that's May 1st to October 31st, 15th of April to the 15th of October. I'm not actually sure about that detail, but that's what I'm expecting.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson, thank you,
We
Councillor.
could use Al O'Brien's old yardstick, when they were down in Portland at the cottage, they came home and the toilet was frozen in the morning. But I do have a question, how do you propose to vandal proof this thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, we have a policy around, well, a practice, I guess, around not having surveillance in that type of location, so I wouldn't expect it to be covered by surveillance. There is lighting at that end of the park, so it is possible that it could at least be located in a position that could be viewed from the road, which helps a little bit, but ultimately, vandalism happens, if there's no way to absolutely prevent it from happening.
Well, I'm not worried about tipping it over rather than somebody painting it, I don't care about that.
Well, however they're installed, you know, I don't, we'll just do what we can with the installer to make sure it's secure, but,
So I'm assuming this is gonna come with an operating budget too for sanitation and supplies, right? Yeah.
that's
That was all-
included in that $3,000.
In that 3,000, okay, fair enough.
So it is, I mean, it's a pretty modest
Mhm.
compared to the operation of our regular washrooms. You can see why some of the municipalities have not wanted to get into the game of having proper plumbed washrooms, but obviously it's no equivalent.
Mhm.
Okay,
Is the school field, the Mahone Bay School Field, the center's field, do they have washroom facilities that are open generally when the field is in use?
The center's open.
Yeah, the center's, that's by design.
Scrape your cleats.
I
Fair enough.
believe it's in the agreements that the center and the Mahone Bay United Group have about the field, is
Okay.
to have the washings be available.
I think that is true.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else on the question? On the motion, all in favor? Motion is carried. All right, let's go to the last one on the third one. No, not quite. Clearway intersection safety. And I looked at the picture of the intersection and I looked at it and I blew it up larger and sure enough, it wasn't Mahone Bay, but anyway.
No, we don't have a raised
We don't have
intersection yet, but, so I presented some analysis here. I mean, I don't think there's any surprise that I'm not full of recommendations about what to do with this intersection, because I do believe that the primary issues that we've all seen and had reports of are enforcement issues and, short of people not rolling through the stop signs, the stop signs are quite visible, so I have presented some options that could increase the visibility. But mostly, you'll see in the report, generally they're applicable in cases we don't have stop signs. Because you got a stop sign, people should be stopping at it. So the only options included that are kind of normally associated with a stop controlled intersection are the other type of flashing stop sign lighting, which is very cost effective to try, may or may not be an effective solution, or the installation of traffic signals, which I think is unwarranted in that location. So my report here is just for information, but obviously it is clear that I'm leaning on the upcoming report on the subject of crosswalks and the expansion of the use of zebra crossings as something that, is interrelated to this. But as I've noted before, I wouldn't recommend that we convert that crossing to a zebra crossing, because then we'd be committing what I think is essentially the cardinal sin of crosswalk marking in terms of the profession is don't have inconsistent markings within your community. If you have a system, you should adhere to the system. And so in our case, stop controlled intersections don't have zebra crossings at the current time. And if we decide to do so, we should decide to do so throughout the community. And so that was the subject of another report that's already been requested and we'll have for the next council. But as far as this specific intersection, I'm not at this time recommending anything, but I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, I just feel the same way. I think as a town, we've pretty much done what we can do except for enforcement. I think that's the biggest solution. I was happy to see the motorcycle RCMP officer here the other day. We made a number of stops that I witnessed, so, maybe it's a start.
And I'm sure as far as getting the attention to enforcement, having these reports and conversations doesn't hurt. And I know I've talked to them about this issue quite a bit, but I was also glad to see them doing that.
Councillor Wilson.
If you don't mind, I just comment on that, because although I get your point, it bothers me a good deal that this guy, whoever he is, always shows up on Sunday afternoon when it's so congested at the monument, you couldn't have an accident if you tried.
But we did.
People are barely moving. And when the real flagrant abusers are around on Monday night at 8 o'clock or Tuesday afternoon at 3:30, no one will be found.
Yeah. Could be, yeah, okay. Councillor Longstreth.
Is there a way you can do a rumble bar or something at the intersection? Yeah, well, strips are very long. I'm talking more about a smaller,
It's a short strip.
yeah,
You can have one, you can have six, I mean.
yeah, but like going into Yarmouth, there's a really
That's
big,
right.
one, right?
Yeah.
But I'm talking about just something that you could put in at each floor that would slow people down.
Typically what you do is
At
you
least
do
give
like
them an
a
alert.
repeated scoring, so like 4 strips across
yeah.
the road. It doesn't have to be more than one lane, you can just do one lane.
Right,
But the effect of that is the same whether you're stopping or not, like every person going through the intersection will experience discomfort.
right.
And the noise factor is, accentuated for everybody else in the community who lives nearby. So you're gonna hear like every time, and you're gonna feel like bumping every time. So it's, 99% compliant. Is that a step that we wanna take? That every other motorist in the surrounding homes we'll have to put up with. But I mean, it is an option. It's an option that I've investigated, but I didn't recommend it here because it really is, again, it's not a stop controlled intersection thing. And it's really recommended for higher speeds, like the one in Yarmouth, where you're coming down from a high speed, you're not in the middle of town. The noise is not inconsiderable too for surrounding homes.
Well,
Yeah,
I know just that, you know, if you hit the center line, when you're on the 103 and you hit it, I mean, it's quite a,
Wakes you up.
yeah. It does make you up.
if my son's sleeping in the back, I try to be very careful not to.
Counselor now.
Just in to Councillor Wilson's thing about the police, could that not be brought up at the next police advisory committee meeting?
Yeah.
To have them coming at odd other times rather than the extreme busy times? Because that's when we seem to have the more problem.
Yeah, well, we can certainly bring that up. I see Eric making a note.
And it's been raised in the past and it mentioned, at least the staff side that has mentioned that they will try even to bring, what do you call them, unmarked vehicles
Yes.
once in a while, remember?
Yeah.
So they know about it. Police resources are.
Yeah,
but as far as.
Memorial thing.
I'm just interested in the idea of consistency in the crosswalk markings. So the idea is to have them consistently marked all through town. So if we did zebra crossings at that intersection, then you'd want to do zebra crossings throughout the whole town. But as it is, where does the idea of consistency stop? Because Bridgewater has the zebra markings everywhere. When there's stop bars and they have zebra markings everywhere. So we're not being consistent with Bridgewater, for example. I don't know what Lunenburg's doing. But is that a consideration?
It isn't really from like the transportation sector, like each jurisdiction will vary and have its own practice. So, I mean, that being said, like we have a lot of the same motorists, people navigating the same communities, so it's not something to be ignored. It's just not normally one of the considerations. I think the fact that they've done it is a good precedent for the upcoming report on that subject.
But the report on the zebra crossings is going to come back to the next council.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
okay.
And just,
Yeah.
because we're gonna get some quotes.
Yeah. Well, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Is it found that these flashing stoplights are more effective than just plain stop signs? The octagonal ones?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I mean, we've already got flashing lights on our stop signs at that intersection.
Do we?
Right? Yeah. Yep,
Oh.
there's a flashing red light on the top. So.
Oh, the little
use
on the
of-
top.
Yeah, the use
No,
of those,
no, okay.
whether it's
Yeah.
the one that I pointed out there or the one on top.
Yeah.
You know, they are somewhat effective in drawing attention to a stop sign. Whether there's a difference between the flashing light on top or the surround, I mean, it's really just some jurisdictions tend to use one and some jurisdictions tend to use the other. The only reason that it might be applicable here is just because it's not that way now. So changing anything could draw some attention to the stop signs. But I continue not to feel that the stop signs are being missed. Like, I don't think it's visitors for the most part rolling through these stops, but.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I don't think that people are not seeing the stop signs. It's just that they have a tendency to say, oh, well, it's nothing coming, off we go.
That's it. You've been
And
at
with
the
the
corner of
three-way-
Fairmont and Pleasant Street
Oh,
constantly.
And, you know, three-way stops have an even greater tendency to that habit, right? Because you look at where you think the one place where there would be anything, oh, there's no car waiting there, I'll just roll right through. And not look as closely for pedestrians as you're supposed to.
Okay. So,
with that being said, I would move that we receive this report for information.
thank you. Do you have a seconder? Moved and seconded to receive the report on the Clearway intersection safety piece for information purposes. On the question, we had a rather robust discussion. All in favor? Motion is carried. 6.6, the fall 2024 debenture participation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it is,
What
I
was
guess
that number you just had on your screen, Mr. Hunt?
was that?
What was that?
Oh, well, and
number?
we're gonna get into talking about numbers in a second, I imagine. So it is that time when we would be going to debenture for the solar project. The project has been completed. We have a 3-year TBR approved by the Minister to borrow, which does, oh, well, actually, I guess it's the 4th year, if it was extended for a year, which does last until January. So we're at that time when it would be expected to go to the province and asked to be included in the next upcoming debenture, which is this fall's debenture. So we can't include any other projects for which we don't have TBRs. The solar project is the one. But the main rationale, of course, is any debt we're carrying right now, we're carrying in a short-term facility with our local bank and paying more interest than we need to be now that the project's complete and eligible to be debentured. So there's some discussion around the amount to be debentured. Obviously, one of the considerations that we had with the project is that we did carry a lot of interest on it throughout the project time. And so in Ashley's recommendation here, she's rolled that into the project cost. So the resulting debenture amount is higher by the amount of the interest, which was pretty substantial overrun. And then I think it was projected at 50 and ended up being more like 300. And then I believe there is also still to be determined the matter of revenue generated by the project during this year, in which there are relatively low operating costs associated with the project because it was coming up online this year. So most of the ongoing costs were kind of covered with that. So there will be a bit of a windfall to the town in the current year, which we had discussed, using to offset the capital cost of the project. It can be used to offset that in a number of ways, but I guess the main thing was that Ashley was not recommending reducing the debenture amount by the anticipated revenue. We'll let council sort that out, and if we wanted to, we could contribute it against that debt, but there are other things that, reasonably speaking, could also offset that, like even just covering principal and interest payments for a period could be a relevant consideration.
Do we have any idea when this outstanding claims will be settled?
It's a sore spot, obviously. It's a question Ashley's asked a lot, and we know we're not the ones responsible for processing the claims. And just for the viewers here too, this is a joint project that has federal and provincial funding, and the federal and provincial funding claims need to be submitted on a sequential basis as invoices are paid for the 3 projects in Berwick, Mahone Bay, and Antigonish, which means that there's a fair bit of sorting out of where the money is going from and to, and invoices being paid. Ashley is rather at the mercy of Antigonish's finance department on that process. So the outstanding is summarized in this report. There is an amount that we can confirm has been submitted and has not yet been received. But as to the timeline, I'm not able to say how soon we can get that.
Councillor Wilson and Councillor Finney.
I'm confused about one comment in here, and it talks about, upon speaking to our advisor, it would appear the rate for the debenture may not be in line with the economic downturn and interest rates we are seeing. As such, I'm recommending we take a 5-year long-term amortized, instead of 5-year long-term amortized over 25 years with the Municipal Finance Corp.
Yeah, so the process, if you go into Municipal Finance Corp, is you say how long you're going to run the financing over, but you refinance multiple times within that period.
Yeah.
So the first time you're naming the total time you're gonna finance it, and also when you're gonna come back for refinancing. So she's suggesting we refinance it after 5 years rather than the usual 15. 15 is the maximum.
Because she thinks interest rates are at a peak.
She thinks interest rate will be better 5 years from now. I mean, it's a gamble, right?
Yeah.
Berwick did that as well,
Yeah.
and Berwick and Ashley.
Strikes me as an informed gamble. Mayor, I certainly support the rollover and will support the proceeding with the debenture. The two, I do think the table, is a departure from our July report. So is the province, so the total project rebates and the outstanding claims. So the outstanding claims is the same number that we saw in July, but the other numbers are different. And I'm wondering if there's a federal government component or there's another rebate component, as these numbers don't entirely line up with the July report from Ashley. And of course, the July report from Ashley caused some consternation because we were wondering, where are we with the state of the rest of the subsidies and the rest of the claims? Is there something we should take away from this, or do you think this is accurate now?
Ashley and I talked a lot about this point because I'm strongly of the opinion, having talked to Randy about this, that there's no reason that we should expect to receive any less than our original contribution agreement, right? And this, the point you're making is
Right.
3.995 is less than the amount that we were supposed to receive. So what's
Yes.
going on? Yeah, I mean, I feel strongly that we have no reason to expect to receive less. That being said,
Right.
Ashley has, I think, reached a point of frustration where her inability to confirm the status of that beyond Randy saying, yeah, you'll get what you promised, has led her to not bank on it. We discussed this
Right.
a lot about when we put this report together, right? Because we could venture $300,000 less notionally, right? We should have
Well, no,
$300,000.
based on the assumption of more receipts, more subsidies coming.
Yeah, based on the assumption that this 3.995 is not everything we were committed.
So this is just one opinion, but I think this is a marked departure from July. And I think that the memo should be clear. Like, I don't think that this should be the governing document on where things stood as of this date. Like, I think this understates the receivable materially and overstates the associated debt of the project because of the fact that our last tranche of receivables is mixed in with Berwick and with Annie Ganesh. So, like, I think the number is fine. Getting authorization for council to go forward with the debenture for 2.3, no problem. But I do think the memo should be amended to reflect the original funding formula and to show where we are relative to the original authorized approved funding formula. Because I think anybody who's sitting around the council table as the winter unfolds is going to be willing to phone whoever we need to phone to ensure that every single cent of the money that's been awarded to us is received by us. And I think that this table, I do think there should be a companion table that illustrates what the original funding formula was, to show that, hey, listen, like, this is what we expect to receive. We just know we're not going to receive it between now and the end of the fiscal year. Fair enough. I think you're
The
saying
amount that we're supposed to receive is $4,238,000. And we're going to receive, according to this, 3.995, right? So there's a shortfall of 240,000. And that could easily be noted here just by saying, total outstanding rebates, 3.995 of committed 4.38, we can make that note in here.
So. And there's another different number than that in the July report. So I think I'd appreciate it, we should make the motion to approve this and move the 2.3 along. But I do think that a follow-up or an amended report that kind of shows like what the award was and what the award is now would be helpful, because I think there's a significant gap between the award and what we received.
Yeah, we received 94% of the award, so there's still an outstanding 6%. And we spent enough money that we should qualify for it.
Fair enough. Anyway, you get the point.
As a layperson, it doesn't make sense to me why the number is different.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Like, I wanted to just put, we will receive the amount that we were promised, right? That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And I think it would make a lot more sense to the public. The concern that Ashley's raising here is the same concern that we've now had for 3 months, is that we don't have anything to point to definitively state the amount of grants received by all 3 parties, how they compare to the original contribution agreement, and when we should all, receive any outstanding funds. I can't speak to why that is the case. All I can say is that we've been assured that the money that we were committed will come through. So in that sense, we can, as Joe said, do the debenture amount, you know, less what we think, $240,000, we think we're still due. And that is what I kind of instinctively wanted to suggest, because again, I have no reason not to. But Ashley is very cautious, again, conservative, and didn't feel that she could, in good conscience, say that we are getting all that money, even though we have every reason to expect it, and I've received assurances that
So
we're gonna.
can I just follow up, if you don't mind? So with what you've explained, I'm just asking myself, so where did Ashley get the numbers that she's putting in?
So these are the numbers that are confirmed by Antigonish as claims that have been submitted. So, like, they've asked the federal government to give us 3.995 million. They haven't asked the federal government to give us 4.238, yeah. And whether they've asked the federal government to give the total amount of money across the three projects, it seems that they haven't, because Antigonish hasn't completed their work. So, you know, what we're being given to understand is it will all shake out at the end, but we don't have numbers that would make that, you know, simple to say, hey, look, we're all short an amount, this is what we're all short, this is the expectation. And part of the problem is that area incurred a lot of the costs directly. So it's not just a matter of actually submitting invoices and those invoices being included in claims. It's some invoices didn't come to us directly.
Why would they, all three parties be short? So that's one question, then, and the other question is, why wouldn't we, as Mahone Bay, use our own figures from the original and not worry about the other two?
And then that's where I think that's the difference of opinion here is, like, how do you approach putting a number to this?
Right.
One way to do it is you just use our numbers that say we're gonna get 4.238. And the other way is to say, well, here's what we can actually substantiate
Right.
from Antigonish to this point. There is a possibility that in the course of all this, some of the claims are being misallocated. It is gonna be way easier to sort that out at the end. Like, I do understand where Randy and Megan are likely hoping Antigonish gets their project done. They reconcile it across the board, make sure everybody's whole, make sure everybody's happy. As it stands, if Area went out and bought panels and paid a supplier for panels, an Area just paid one invoice. And then those panels got divvied up between the projects. You can see how there's a paper trail there that is not simple.
All I'm suggesting, Dylan, is that the memo to council be edited to include a complementary table or second table that maps back to the July 11th report, so that there's a paper trail, so that but just to maintain information in the public domain, so we keep track of, you know, where we thought we were and where we are now, so that this document doesn't become the gospel. It's basically what we're saying is that, okay, we are where we are, excellent news. We should proceed with the debenture, fair enough. We do think that there's this outstanding question of this last claim, which is going to be adjudicated and reviewed with our partners sometime in 2025. That's all I'm suggesting, is that we somehow put it on the record so that this document illustrates that there is still this outstanding conversation. That's all I'm suggesting, and then maybe reissue the memo again, and we'll.
I think that would be,
Right?
ideally what we do is we get the pre-approval motion and then actually do a motion here asking staff to provide council with an updated memo. And then that will happen at such a time as we've actually got the debenture result, right? So then Ashley's got something to add to the memo in addition to the corrections.
So
And maybe some new information.
Right. Because I think, like, the theme writ large is incredible. And I do think it's entirely appropriate that we capitalize the interest. That's standard construction methodology. I think we should absolutely do that. Recover the interest that the town general paid for. So the town general was paying for all those carrying costs. We should bundle those into the price of the project and the associated PPA in due course. So I think this is on track and good news. We should, so I don't want to just belabor by this point. I don't want to be trying to reverse back and say, you know, this memo is the fact, because there's still this outstanding item. Anyway, yeah, I think we're all on the same page.
you harken back to some of the discussions we've had over the last 2 weeks. In particular, and it becomes very precarious to have this kind of an unknown factor in front of us. It's only, and I say only, tongue in cheek, $250,000-300,000 out of X million. But still, I think it gives cause for the citizen to say, well, how come? Why is it? You know, where'd the money go?
Where'd the money go? Exactly.
And just to put a point on that too, is, you know, at the end of the day, as Councillor Feeney mentioned, this should all be to the calculation of a power purchase price for the energy. So, you know, that will be able in the fullness of time to take into account these outstanding points, like those will be understood and will be expressed in that PPA. So we will make sure that the town is whole and the utility is whole.
Mr. Wilson, do you have a comment? Councillor Wilson?
No, thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor?
I guess I'd like to move the council adopts the attached approval resolution for the fall venture.
So what you're actually moving is the words
Oh,
on
it's
the
down there.
temporary borrowing resolution
That's a
page.
lot, yeah, obvious. Okay, do you want me to read all of those?
I mean, I don't think you need to. I think it's okay to say I move the wording as written here, but that'd be up to the chair. If the chair is willing to let you off. We'll- Can skip all the whereases, I guess. We could just read the that.
Please
Still a
skip
fair
them.
bit of stuff to read.
Wouldn't be the first time that we skip the whereases. However, if council ensures that they've read them and they agree with them, then we can proceed. Do we have a seconder for Deputy Mayor's motion? Councillor now seconds. You've heard the motion. And whereas you've heard the motion, on the question. All in favor? Motion's carried.
Do you want to move the motion with the memo?
For the direct staff to,
Prepare an updated memo
And-
until
and-
everybody-
Pardon me, please. Eric did it, yeah. You have to frame that up. Yeah, just update the memo as per the conversation. Thank you. Thank you, Francis.
Moved, seconded. On that question, all in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, no council items. Let's go to committee reports. The Asset Management Committee, there's a motion in there. A rather protracted discussion on the water and water management issues at the last meeting. Anyone have any questions about it?
It was nice to bring something forward from the committee's lengthy discussions over the
Yeah.
past year.
It's been a protracted discussion to get through all these pieces and the details, and Councillor Carter.
Well, this is just a comment, because I'm going through the plan, or the draft plan, and I'm sure it will be part of the orientation for the new council.
That was part of the intention here. We've got Municipal Awareness Week coming up, and great to have these out to publicize.
Uh-huh.
And then also the incoming council, and
Yeah,
it's a good primer on the existing
yeah,
infrastructure.
absolutely.
Nothing in these documents is new. Everything's been approved by council. It's just bringing it out in a different format.
Well, even this map with the colored lines about the risk and the what's planned, I mean, in the context of all of the discussion about infrastructure, this would be very helpful.
It's amazing how much time it takes to do the kind of detail that the asset management plans
Yeah, I'm sure.
encompass.
Exactly.
And they'll always be a work in progress. And the big thing we've highlighted at the committee level is these are auto generating now, like we've done the work. So every year these can just be updated. The council will pass the budget plan projects get imported here, and it just continues to be an updated piece of information.
Just another suggestion, could a description of that process, very shortened, be in the mayor's newsletter upcoming? Is there gonna be another one before you?
It was
before
gonna
you're
be
done?
one where I said,
Oh, your farewell.
thank you
Your-
very much.
Um,
Well, maybe the first one for the new
I think this is just such valuable information and that process, how much
Yeah.
time it's taken, and that it's now all automated, ready to move forward. Anyway, that wasn't the,
It wouldn't have to be in the mayor's message, it could be still in the newsletter somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, actually thinking about the November newsletter, and other than the mayor's outgoing message, it's probably municipal awareness focus, right? So that may be a good opportunity.
so you have a motion, if somebody would care
I
to make
would
it.
move that council approve the draft asset management plans for the water, wastewater, stormwater, and transportation for public distribution by the town's website.
Okay, so the public will have access through our website to see what they are.
I'm happy to second the motion.
Councillor Carver seconds, you've heard the motion. On the question. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. I think that's it for that one. So let's go
It's a lot of
to,
work.
Yeah, I mean, it's really in the background, like we had to get all the data.
Yeah.
We had to parse all the data, we had to have the committee evaluate and assess risk and all this different stuff, so, yeah, it's a lot of work in the background.
and the committee membership has changed 2 or 3 times over its life. And there's a lot of people in the asset management world in the background that have been doing a lot of work for us as well.
And, you know, we should credit Mr. Mayor with having been a continuous part of this from the beginning, because I think you're right, the committee's changed over, but you've been there.
Just a mere shadow. of the-
You've been at all the conferences, you know, so, anyway.
Okay, let's go to the Climate and Environment Committee. The draft minutes are there.
I don't think there's anything arising. And just toward the end of this term, it's been a fabulous committee with really passionate, engaged committee members and who've provided a lot of expertise in their advisory role.
And I'm sure it's
Oh,
only
it's been
just
real-
beginning.
Jen, does anybody know how the upskill event went on Saturday? I couldn't go.
I was there for the opening session.
Mhm.
There was about 40 people there, maybe 50 at the top. All seemed to be quite interested. Most of them I didn't recognize.
Mhm.
They appeared to be, St. Margaret's Bay community had a lot of people
Yeah.
in for it, but I would, just from what I saw, the enthusiasm, a few discussions I had with people, I would expect that it was a resounding success.
Yeah, I think that's what I'd heard from Lauren as well. I mean, I'm sure there'll be a deeper debrief at some point,
Yeah.
but, yeah, there were, a couple of the concurrent presenters didn't get a lot of attendance. Sometimes those happen. People were just interested in a different presentation. But other than that, I've only heard good things.
Great.
Okay, there's no motions in there. Let's go to the Lunenburg County Senior Safety Program.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if it was relevant, but you did jump over playing
Yes,
advisory.
We had an interesting last
meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. How was the meeting the other night? They all had fun, did they, that day in there?
It was a good meeting, good last meeting for me. There is, it's not in the minutes in sort of in a big way, but I think there might be a little bit of need for clarification around the Edgewater Street project and where things are at some point, before we head off into elections.
Mhm.
I don't know how that will get done, but I think it's important to just have some clarification as to where things are at. And and what stage things will be and what plans are there for communication with the public. I did try my best to sort of present our decision around committees and their submission of feedback to council and to the process of projects. Some people accepted it, some people didn't, but expected that to be the case. And hopefully, one of the piece is that when the new council comes to be sworn in, I think having a very clear understanding folks who are coming on to council committees that reading terms of reference and understanding what they mean and what they stand for, and that those are what guide people chairing those committees is important, because I just felt that there's a struggle there in understanding that.
So the soon to be elected council that will be sworn in on November the 12th, one of their early tasks would be to review the terms of reference for the various committees in anticipation of inviting people to join them.
Yeah, and as people get invited to join, when they do join, that there's a very good careful review of what the terms of reference are, because I think
Yeah.
probably some folks have been around in committees, but some, from my perspective, probably not fully understood the terms of reference, and that needs to be reinforced, I think. So it doesn't create the kind of expectations that are not.
We haven't done a lot of norm setting with our committees, like you just show up and you're expected to know how they operate, and maybe we could do more of that.
Yeah.
I'm just listening to the deputy mayor's comments and thinking, that as well as review. Instruction or information about the terms of reference, also an opportunity to review them with the potential to adapt them or change them. So that,
And as the committee's policy says, for the new council, the key thing in that is understanding the role council wants the committees to play relative to council. And, I think then you turn around and try to make sure that public members also understand the role the council wants the committees to play relative to council, but it's really key for council to know what you want out of the committees. And, I think we had a lot of those conversations, and I think generally the committee stayed on that mandate. But future councils may wish to change the way those committees interface with council, so.
and committees might recommend a change that council.
They might, but my
accept.
whole point in the comment was to suggest that council ought to be the one determining what should be
Yeah.
the output of the committees.
In the end, but
They are committees of council, not
Yeah.
what. But it further to what was mentioned about the whole communication piece with the Edgewater project, enhancing that. And one of the things that I heard last night at the candidates forum for the two mayoral candidates was that the business community is quite concerned about what's going to happen on Edgewater and Main Street in the coming months. And that they would be looking for a regularized communication piece with town hall / contractors, so they can know in advance what's coming and when they're gonna have a roadblock in front of their front door, or what the situation might be, and not leave it to happenstance. So further to what the deputy mayor said, it could become a focal point for staff, and hopefully like we had when we tore up Main Street in front of the pharmacy. And Deputy CAO Hughes was in contact with people every day, went door to door giving out flyers when she had to keep them abreast of what was going to happen. Maybe a model to consider for that much larger, much more invasive project that's coming on Edgewater and Main Street.
Very good idea.
Anyway, anything else? We don't have a motion in there for that one. All right. So let's go to. We're down to the senior safety program, the monthly report. Councilor Carver, did you have any comments on it, or?
Councillor Donis Croft.
We did that last meeting too.
Well, the senior safety committee has been very busy. Lots of home visits taking place by our executive director, coordinator. And sometimes it's a little too busy. But anyway, we're doing a good job at helping seniors out in sometimes stressful or hard times. So the program is really good. They're doing a lot of community programs within the community, and more slated. So I move that we accept this report.
Okay,
Second that.
seconded. But notice the special request for used iPhones,
Oh, yes.
which they repair, and I assume they give them to people who may have no other means of
Yes.
communications.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, I
And
was
flip,
wondering if
even the
that-
flip phone is preferred too, because a lot of them aren't using them for internet, they're using them for.
just for phones.
Well, we wouldn't have any flip phones, but I was wondering, Eric, maybe you could take this back to Lisa and MJSB IT. They do go through a fair bit of this type of equipment.
It's a great idea.
It's a good idea.
And they do hand stuff to
Hmm.
computers for schools and
Yeah.
And they're quite possibly already
A lot of.
well aware of this program. I'm
Mhm.
not saying they're not already contributing to it. I wasn't sure, so.
I'm sure Michael Grace made them aware.
Yeah, he's always getting in touch.
okay. Well, that concludes. Oh, that's right, for information. On the question, all in favor, motion's carried. Now. We're down to the end of our regular agenda. We do have an in-camera piece to come. There are 3 items, one under MGA 22-2A, the acquisition, sale, lease, and security of municipal property. A second one under 22-2E for contract negotiations. And the third is 22-2G, legal advice eligible for solicitor client privilege. So we'll take a moment to thank the people at home. How many do we have online with us?
11 right now.
11.
Yeah.
Very good. Glad that those people were able to join us tonight. This is the final regularly scheduled council meeting for this particular group. After the election, a week from Saturday, October 19th, but you can vote electronically beginning on the 10th.
Thursday.
Thursday, the 10th. There's no paper voting this year. It's all to be done electronically. If you have any questions, folks at home can contact the people at Town Hall. And then the people who are chosen by you, the citizens, to represent you at this table will be sworn in on November the 12th, along with a new mayor. So with that,
Questions?
yeah, with that, we'll ask if anyone at home has a question for council on any topic that was discussed this evening.
Also, can they not come into town hall anytime after the 10th, at any time during business hours to vote?
Yes, well, they can come in at any time during business hours to receive assistance with voting.
So, yes,
Because we just want to make it clear that you can vote, obviously, on your device at home
Yes,
or anywhere.
but-
But if you want assistance.
You'll
with
have an
that-
iPad here in town hall for them to vote on?
Yeah, so we'll be set up with a voter help center in the meeting room on the
Okay.
2nd floor, and there'll be signs posted to help guide people in. And like the CAO said, that'll be for people who need assistance with the technology or the voting platform itself. It's not a polling station in the
Okay.
classical sense, it's just help with the computer.
All right. Any questions pop up?
Nothing tonight, no.
Everybody must have liked what we did. Nobody's got any questions. So, thank you very much, people at home, for joining us. Look forward to seeing you at the polling booth on the 19th or before. Doesn't really matter who you vote for, it matters to you. But what's really important is you get out and vote. Okay, with that, no, we don't need a motion to adjourn. We've done our agenda.
Motion for closed session.
Motion to go into closed session. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Carver, seconded by Councillor Now, all in favor?